Hello, my dear friends, and welcome to another episode of Europa Rediviva. I was asked by a commentator to say something about this process that has been underway for some time now, that Ukrainian companies buy up Romanian industry, Romanian heavy industry, and that Ukrainian companies build up subsidiaries in Romania, and that there are these Ukrainian-Romanian joint ventures in military production. So essentially a part of the Ukrainian economy is moving into Romania. And there's a lot to unpack here. So the short answer would be the fact that Ukraine is receiving all this money, and it cannot direct all of this money to the war economy and to the building of weapons because it has enough weapons. What it is lacking is manpower. And here Romania also plays an important role, as I've said in previous videos regarding the false flag attempts to bring Romania into the war and to mobilize the Romanian population to send them into the front lines to fight against a so-called Russian attack. But with respect to the economy, there are several processes undergoing that we are not conscious of in the fact that we can read about them from somewhere. Usually the present is written about with the benefit of hindsight decades later. So if there are any surprising developments, any interesting things that are going on historically, any important evolutions, we will not be aware of them. This is a feature of history. People who lived in the last centuries of the Roman Empire did not know that they were living in the last centuries of the Roman Empire. Germans in 1936 could not have imagined that less than 10 years from then their entire statehood would disappear. The state would essentially no longer exist as an independent political entity, and their country would just be turned into the occupation zones of several other militaries. It's the best we can do is to infer, and we can infer about what's going on by understanding the system very well, the nature of the system. And I've spoken about this in previous episodes, about the nature of the international system. In order to understand what's going on with Romania and what are the processes, what are the factors that influence the evolutions in Romania, we have to understand, first of all, the nature of the international system, the role that Romania plays in the international system, what are the internal factors in Romania that move it closer to these general evolutions in the international system. And I've done episodes on this. It's not something that I can summarize all in one episode. Essentially, we are living in the time of crisis of the short-lived American hegemonic period, the Pax Americana. And the United States has expanded this empire ever since it reached unipolarity in 1991 with the fall of the Soviet Union. The United States has continuously been building its empire. This has been documented by several policy papers, by their think tanks, and by several books written by their strategists like Zbigniew Brzezinski, like Kissinger, like the people affiliated with the Project for a New American Century, so the neocons. Anyway, so if you don't understand the nature of the international system and you just your representation of it is how Western mainstream media describes it, then you have no chance of understanding what I'm talking about, because mainstream media, Western mainstream media, is a part of this system, and its purpose is not to objectively describe the system. Its purpose is to do PR on behalf of the system, to advance the interests of the system. This is why whenever a country refuses to align itself with the United States, it gets bad press in the West. And this was the case with Romania as well. Whenever it disobeyed the orders from Washington, the political force running Romania were a bunch of dictators implementing a totalitarian state. And they were very corrupt and oligarchic, and they had to be toppled by any means necessary. Luckily, the US already had developed its means inside Romania to do that, with colored revolutions, but even more so with lawfare. So to use the criminal justice system in order to put in jail those people who were at the top of that political class that refused to receive dictates from Washington, and to have the rest scared and controlled and blackmailed so as to do Washington's will. This has been the case in Romania. This has been Romania's recent history. Of course, if you read the Western press, Romania's recent history has been the other way around. Romania's recent history has been a continuous fight of the beautiful and young people, educated and Western, against the autocratic tendencies that are aligned with Russia and that want to subvert Romania's Western integration in order to bring it into the Russian orbit. This would be the narrative of the Western press. Unfortunately for Romania, the educated part of the public goes for the Western narrative. So the educated part of the Romanian public is not interested in the actual factual history of the, well, last decades of Romania, but it is interested in parroting the Western narrative about it and to further subjugate Romania to these Western interests. And this is a process that unfortunately cannot be undone. The culture has been engineered to such an extent in Romania that any sort of invocation of national interest, of sovereignty, even when the statehood itself is at risk, even when the political existence of the Romanians as an independent people is jeopardized, even in such dire circumstances, trying to formulate a national position and trying to orient yourself towards the national interest already brings you the labeling and the ostracization and the boycott and threats and all these things from the educated part of the Romanian society. Some of them being part of this network of foreign agents, of course, who are funded by these Western NGOs who function at the behest of their respective countries and who have the interest to instrumentalize Romania as much as possible. But others are just dumb, as I used to be one some time ago. I used to be part of this network of clappers, of seals, regarding the lawfare processes, regarding Romania's servitude towards the West and so on. Because I was brought up like this. So the higher education system in Romania is this very classist system which tries to perpetuate the values of the upper class, not to actually educate people into how to think. And the upper class, as I've said in previous videos, as I've demonstrated historically, has always been this treacherous class of, foreign elites, essentially. So even before Romania's independence, and to a large extent even after, with the sole exception of the communist period, the Romanian elite class was dominated by foreigners, and the majority of the local populations were indentured servants, they were serfs, and they were heavily exploited and had no political power whatsoever. And we're going back to that regime. So there is a majority in the country that wants a different direction. Their political options cannot be respected. It is the elite that runs the country institutionally, and that elite is willing to do anything not to allow the political preferences of the majority of the Romanians to take shape and to get power and to actually change policy. So basically there's this network of blackmail, intimidation, threats going on against any possible agent of Romanian sovereignty. There's this public delegitimization of any type of sovereigntist voice. And should any sovereigntist reach power, there would be a color revolution orchestrated against him. And if that doesn't oust him, then some lawfare, some made-up trials with some made-up charges, and the person would be removed from politics and shamed and broken as a person after some stints in jail. This is the nature of the system in Romania. This is the current state. And the nationalist forces have pretty much dissipated. Now there is this opposition that tries to claim that it is patriotic. However, it is functioning at the behest of the United States and Israel, and it just tries to deepen Romania's servitude towards the US system, but with a different aesthetic, with the aesthetic of the Republican Party, of MAGA, well, of the kosher sovereigntist movement that's affiliated with Likud. So Romania has no escape from this system. Both sides of the political spectrum have received ample contributions from from these American think tanks. The so-called liberal, centrist, pro-European mainstream part has received all of these contributions from the National Endowment for Democracy, from USAID, and so on. The sovereigntists have received contributions from the German Marshall Fund of the United States. It's all documented in their careers, in their previous careers of NGO, as masquerading as NGO activists and as think tank experts. So this is the nature of the political system in Romania, and this is the nature of the media, of the public discourse. So now, for example, because Ukraine is the proxy that the US uses against Russia, just like Taiwan and some other countries in Southeast Asia are the proxies being used by the US against China. Of course, that the dominant strategy for the US is to build up its proxy, to have its proxy be as powerful as possible. And this is why the European vassals of the United States, including Romania, have to be as subservient as possible to Ukraine. And this is why the public discourse is engineered to be as pro-Ukrainian as possible, not to give away the true nature of the conflict, but to camouflage it under this so-called moralism, that this side is good and the other side is bad, and to advance all of these premises which cannot be questioned, and that leads to the only conclusion that military intervention is necessary against Russia by the rest of the proxies as well. So basically the premise that Russia will not stop there, that Russia is essentially the new golden horde, and it is just moving westwards, genociding and raping everybody, and if it is not stopped in Ukraine, it will genocide and rape the next layer of NATO countries. So basically all of these premises, which are false, but which need to be instrumentalized to basically not leave any kind of room for maneuver for these countries. So you need to have the Baltics, Finland, Poland, Romania. Well, with Slovakia and Hungary, it didn't work that well, nor did it work with Bulgaria, because they have a bit more experience of what Russia really is, and they also have some more intelligent, let's say, deep state operatives. Well, in Poland also it's kind of ambivalent, but there are these countries that are completely politically captured by Washington and are put in this on this suicidal path in order to battle this Russian aggression in the future, to make this future threat present by getting themselves involved in the war against Russia. And Romania is in the worst situation, maybe together with the Baltics, but the Baltics, let's say, have this statal nature, that they are, let's say, well within their rights to consider themselves under an existential Russian threat, because they used to be part of the Soviet Union, they used to be part of the Tsarist Empire. They have these large minorities of Russian speakers, and they're basically, their entire statehoods are acts of resistance against Russia. Okay, in their case, maybe it's more understandable why they would be willing to commit suicide in order to protect themselves from a Russian threat, which they deem probable. But in the case of Romania, this is just the result of the instrumentalization of the history, of the political system, done by this media apparatus that functions at the behest of the West, operated through these media outlets that the West has, and that branched into Romania, operated through these investment funds that bought up traditional Romanian media, operated through the lawfare mechanism that put some journalists in prison, journalists that were not, let's say, servile enough to the American point of view. And well, through all of these processes, the landscape in Romania is completely captured. There is nothing that can stop this process, and of course, this process utilizes Romania first and foremost to prop up the Ukrainian proxy. Because if you denounce the sovereigntist logic and if you accept the hegemonist American imperialist logic, then Romania has to be used as a pawn in the general American system and sacrificed accordingly. The countries that are the so-called friends or allies of the United States, even though Kissinger said it very well, to be an enemy of the United States is dangerous because, the United States wages war, proxy war or direct war against all of these countries which it does not control. But to be a friend of the United States is lethal, so said Kissinger, former state secretary and national security advisor of the United States. Why did he say that? Well, because on the grand chessboard, as is the title of this book by Zbigniew Brzezinski, another influential security architect of the United States system, in this system, allies of the United States, to put them euphemistically, are on various rungs of a pyramid, on various layers of a pyramid. And there are some which are closer to the vision of the United States, closer to the values of the United States, closer to, well, essentially they're also slaves, but they are slaves that the United States is less willing to sacrifice completely. It is instrumentalizing them, but it considers it has a bond with it, a cultural bond. So, for example, Britain would be such a house servant. It's not a field servant. It's not a field serf picking up the cotton. It's kind of like the butler of the system, you know. So it is still subservient to the United States, but the United States would not want to have it completely destroyed in the process. But there are some other countries for which the United States has no qualms about sacrificing. And I'll let you guess on which part of this pyramid, on which layer of this pyramid does Romania sit. You can take a wild guess. You can understand what is the position of Romania in this U.S. system, if it is a more sacrificable pawn or a less sacrificable pawn, by observing its relationship with the United States. So, for example, the presidency of Romania signed this lobby contract with a lobby company operating in the United States. I think it's like $5 million a month, because it wants to ensure a photo opportunity at the White House. So it wants to ensure some sort of state visit in which Trump would say, I love Romania, here's a MAGA hat, you guys are doing great, we love you. Because the psycho-emotional development of the Romanian elite, of the educated public, is that of a retarded child from the orphanage who has no parents, wants to be adopted by somebody, and does not realize how he's being used and abused. So Romania, the educated part of the Romanian society, including its political class, including its the leaders of the Romanian institutions, have this retarded view of international relations, that if you're as subservient as possible, and if you sacrifice any possible national interest that you might have for a country, that country will love you. They actually are so imbecilic that they believe it's about sentiments, it's about feelings, it's about being on the morally good part of history, as if the Americans were ever on the morally good part of history. They're a country built and expanded on genocide, and all of their foreign interventions were barbaric. But somehow the Romanian elites hid themselves. Of course, as I said, some of them are just paid scumbags, and they know very well what they're doing and what the nature of the United States is. But the grand majority are, from this respect, have the emotional maturity of a 9-year-old from the orphanage. This is their level of development. This is how they see the world. They they believe any kind of psyop that the Americans orchestrate against any country. They believe that the US is inherently good and moral, and it's like mommy. And all the countries that want to do their thing without following the dictates of the United States are evil. And those countries should be punished by mommy on the Potomac. And this is why they support the bombing of Iran. They support the kidnapping of the president of Venezuela. They support an invasion of Cuba. They support the war against China. They support a war against Russia. There is no cause of the United States that they would not support, because they have this retarded infantile view that if they do what daddy wants from them without questioning, then daddy will love them. They behave like children, like unloved children, who just want to be as supplicative as possible so as to receive daddy's love. And the president of Romania is no different. He is actually the embodiment of this ethos, and this is why he was elected. This is why 7 million Romanians went out and voted for him, because he embodies best this cognitive impairment and this psycho-emotional handicap that the educated Romanian part of society manifests, that we somehow need to do whatever we can to please daddy, and we should commit suicide to the greatest extent in order to do what daddy wants from us, and to have him instrumentalize us in any way he deems fit, even if it means the destruction, the physical suicide of the Romanian people through a devastating nuclear war and the annihilation of the country and the people. Even if it goes so far, we should still please daddy, and we should still help daddy with anything, because this is how we will get daddy's love. Daddy will invite us to the White House. He will say nice things. He will pat us on the head, and he will give us a nice hat, like the previous president received. Klaus Iohannis, who was president of Romania for 10 years, received this red MAGA hat. Donald Trump put it on his head, and he was very happy about it. He was asked by a Romanian during some celebrations why he chose to become the slave of the Americans. And Iohannis' response was a very natural one, very fitting to the ethos of the educated part of the Romanian population. But whose servant did you want me to become? That of Russia? So basically, this is the archetype that we are inheriting from history. The masses have no political representation, have no power. They are just abused, sacrificed, and they are the proverbial serfs after which the name of Romanians was modeled. In the Middle Ages, being Romanian was equivalent to being a serf, not only in terms of social condition, but the name itself. Român meant serf, meant indentured agricultural laborer, and Românie was the condition, serfdom. So Romania, if the country had a U instead of an O, it would have meant serfdom. They changed it in the 19th century. They said, okay, how about we call it Romania, so that it is not identical to the name for serfdom. But Romania with a U was the name that was still used in the Western documents and in the Western press all the way to the 1970s. So if you look up Romania, you'll see that there are a lot of British and American articles about Romania. So this condition of being a Român, of being a serf to the foreign elites, is something that we inherit from history. It's an archetype. Having elites that are foreign, treacherous, and completely subservient to a foreign power is also something that we inherit from history, from the Middle Ages all the way to the 19th century, when they became vassals of France and so on. And this is the manifestation of the country today. And it's just a pattern, the historical pattern that Romania cannot escape. And this is now leading state evolution to function in reverse. So in the 19th century, there was this slow building of the Romanian state and reaching independence and so on, and with the communist regime installing a regime of development We are all tributaries to what was built in the communist times. Anything that differentiates us from a sub-Saharan African country in terms of infrastructure and social infrastructure was built in communism. And we inherited this, and we started the reverse process. So, as a result of the coup d'etat instigated by the agents of the Soviet Union and of the Western secret services, the development regime was liquidated, and we are now doing the whole process in reverse. So, liquidating state assets, liquidating state property, liquidating any sort of national discourse. And in the end, we will end up liquidating the country because, I mean, if a tendency manifests itself and there's nothing to stop it or to reverse it, it will just keep on manifesting itself to its final conclusion. And this will be the final conclusion. It's not even far away. It's not even far away in time. And of course, many things could have determined this path. In the case of Romania, in the case of the contemporary Romanian evolutions, it will be the war in Ukraine. It could have happened in another way. Romanian statehood could have been ended through another process. The fact that it was bound to be ended is something inescapable, because once you set in motion this process, basically turning the state inside out and using the antibodies of the state to hunt for domestic agents and to promote foreign agents in the positions of power, then the process of dilution and dissolution is inevitable to follow through all the way to the end. But it could have happened for another cause. Coincidentally, there's this neighbor that we have that is daddy's best proxy in the war against daddy's biggest enemy, or second biggest enemy, perhaps. And so, yeah, the pawn called Romania has to be sacrificed in order to prop up the proxy that daddy holds dearest. And the Romanian elites will go for it, and any kind of questioning of the Ukrainian discourse is already getting you labeled, not only from the so-called NGOs and from the so-called press, but even at state level. So the Romanian presidential administration launched this campaign to equate any kind of sovereigntist position to being Russian disinformation. So when this happens at the highest echelons of the state, there's no going back. And as I said, coincidentally, there's this war. Ukraine needs what we have, and it will get what we have. It could have happened for another reason. For example, maybe some agreement could have been reached to make Russia capitulate even more, so to move away even more from its red lines and to allow Ukrainian NATO accession, and then there would have been no war in Ukraine. There would have been a war in the Kuban area. Georgia and Ukraine would have ganged up to try to close Russian access to the Black Sea. The war would have been somewhere else, and our purpose would have been not so important. But it didn't work, and Russia did not budge, and now, Ukraine needs to be helped, and this is what Romania is being sacrificed for. But Romania could have been sacrificed for Israel, for example. So let's say this war had not started in its current form, and let's say Israel's existence would have been jeopardized by some solidarity of the Muslim countries around the Palestinian cause. When you have such a dispensable country at your disposal, when you have a country and the people and the political elite that wants to do everything for you and that shuns doing anything for its national interest, then of course you can see fit that you move Israel there. I mean, it's just like a Joker card. You can use it for any cause. You can sacrifice it at the behest of any cause. There's this news today. NATO is praising Romania because Romania sacrificed some civilian flights in order to help U.S. operations against Iran. I mean, Romania is no autonomous agent anymore. Romania will just do what Daddy says in whatever respect. If Daddy, for example, wants Romania to use its population for medical experiments, the Romanian political elite will do that, and they will say that whoever opposes it is pro-Russian. There is no limit to the suicidal character of the Romanian elites. And when you have such a country, of course, that you will use it for whatever you want. The Romanian elites essentially went to Washington and they said, "Daddy, please use us as you see fit. There's nothing that you want and we don't want. So just consider us useful for something." Because they hope that betraying the country in this way will somehow advance their personal positions. I know their families will receive American citizenship, their children will go to school in US colleges, and they will receive some money and maybe US citizenship, and maybe they'll buy a house in Florida and retire there when they're old. This is their logic and this is their incentive structure. And the Romanian people, as I said, have no power. Whenever somebody goes from the masses through the educational system to become part of the elite, is molded into this shape of a traitor, is molded into interiorizing the foreign discourse and considering it the most important one, considering it essential, despising any kind of national discourse, despising even what the Romanian authorities say if they are contradicted by the Western press or by the position of another country that the Western press puts in high esteem, like Ukraine, because it doesn't necessarily have to be a Western country. Ukraine is more to the east than Romania, but Ukraine is the most Western country for the Western loving elites, for the Western fetishizing elites, because this is the golden calf that they have to venerate. They are told by the West to venerate this golden calf and to sacrifice, to do human sacrifices for him, and this is what they do. Ukraine is the most Western country from the point of view of the Romanian elite, because they function through this patronage system to not build anything for the country, just to build something for themselves and to function as foreign agents. Essentially, the Romanian higher education system is a factory of foreign agents, and the most successful products of this system are the ones that actually manage to obtain these sinecures, that manage to enter into these NGOs or into these foreign media outlets and to become foreign agents. This is essentially the dream, the career path, the best career destination for any graduate of the Romanian educational system, because this is what ensures professional success, legal immunity. I know some people in NGOs, in these American-funded NGOs, that do all sorts of things that might be prosecutable by law, but they know that they have immunity because they collaborate with the embassy of the United States, and they praise the lawfare system that the U.S. has created in Romania, and therefore they will never be targeted by this lawfare system. Other people who did nothing but just support the national interest are the targets, become the targets of this lawfare system, and they will always have immunity. It's like a get out of jail free card. They can do whatever. So this is what I wanted to talk to you about today. This is the nature of a captured society, not only of a captured state, a captured society and a captured people who no longer regards itself as a people and who no longer wishes to do anything for its own interest, and to do it does everything at the behest of these foreign interests. And of course, if you have a household, and I'm trying to make an analogy so as to show why the end is near, and it is inextricably bound to the path that Romania is in. So if you have a house and a family, you have a household with some assets, and you function at the behest of a foreign interest, you will be asked, and you will maybe be convinced that this is the moral thing to do, to give away everything. Sign away your house, give away all your assets, give away your children, give away your wife, give away everything for these foreign interests, because this is the moral thing to do. And if you do not do that, then you are immoral. So being caring for your asset base and caring for your household and for your people is somehow regarded as fascist, nationalistic, and That's just not allowed, and it's also immoral because we know what Hitler did. So therefore, you just have to sign away everything that you have, end up on the street, and maybe give up a kidney, give up, I don't know, whatever is transplantable of you, and yeah, you'll just be left as a rotting carcass. This is the only end state of this process. There is no other end state but this. If you agree to go on the suicidal path, then yeah. So the economy of Romania will be less and less Romanian. It is already almost almost 0% Romanian, but it will become 0% Romanian. Everything will be given away. The public discourse will be that if you oppose this, you're a Russian agent and you are a nationalist and a fascist and a communist. And well, at some point, this asset that Romania has and that Ukraine needs, which is the manpower, will also be required. So the Constanța event did not go through, but some other event of its kind will go through, and Romania will do conscription, and it will send its men to die in the Donbass, because yeah, when you are serfs, when you are willing serfs, or you want to instrumentalize your population for foreign interests, then there is no other outcome. You will do whatever you are told and be happy about it. Be happy that you respect daddy's wishes. So this is what I wanted to talk about today. If you like what I do, like, share, subscribe. If you want to support my work, you'll find a link in the description how to support me financially. And until next time, take care.